These are stadium trucks, and they're absolutely mental. The racing series where 650 horsepower V8 powered trucks race around circuits, cornering on 3 wheels and flying over these insane jumps. And if you're thinking this looks like a recipe for disaster, well, you're kind of right.
And that was enough.
I think he knew.
But this also seems to be the recipe for incredible racing. Just watch this. This is the final lap of a race in Perth. The orange truck is trying anything to get by and chucks it up the inside. Just a touch of contact, nearly rolls, but the blue truck has a better run. They fly down the final straight over a jump before crossing the line mid-air.
They sound great, they look great, and one thing's for sure, the racing is always super exciting.
Incredible, incredible racing. Just tell me if you've seen a more exciting finish than that.
Sometimes if you ain't cheating, you ain't winning.
Right, I'm sure you have a million questions about these things, but let me show you this. Have you ever seen a car shoot up in value? Just look at this. It's a Porsche 917. These race cars have shot up in value. This car, chassis number 24, sold for $14 million in 2015, and is probably worth a lot more now. Definitely a good investment.
Well, if this series had any rules, he might be in trouble.
Yeah.
The series was started by Robbie Gordon, a NASCAR driver who was fed up with the insane performance differences between the top, well-funded teams and the rest, and so wanted to start a racing series where money wasn't the difference, but the driver was. Oh, and also a series that was a real spectacle to watch, and he certainly achieved that second goal. But the idea wasn't new. These sorts of trucks have competed in loads of series before, but not in the way that Robbie was thinking of. There'd been a few stadium truck series where trucks would race on dedicated dirt circuits constructed inside stadiums, with jumps and other features. But Robbie decided that his series would race on street tracks and proper circuits, with aluminium jumps added, just to spice things up, I think. It was a weird idea, but it seems to have really worked. Now, you might be thinking, this doesn't sound that cheap, given that was what Robbie was trying to sort out. Well, he did do that, and he came up with some unusual rules, but we'll get to that in a bit. So, these trucks, they're V8 powered, it's a Chevy LS engine, of course, with over 650 horsepower going to the rear wheels. And you might have thought they'd be 4-wheel drive by looking at them, but they're not. And you can get a vibe for the sport by looking at this. The 2 leaders come through across the line under a yellow for this crash, but decide to finish in style, with one of them donuting to cross the line backwards, and the other finishing on 2 wheels, of course. Stadium super trucks are definitely about putting on a show. They're also actually pretty light at 1,200 kilos, which is pretty good considering the size of the trucks. And like a lot of these race cars, they may look like a production truck, but underneath they're a bespoke space frame chassis. They then put a shell on top, but with the close racing, these shells often come off. But the most impressive thing about these trucks is that they're built like tanks. I'm going to show you some of the shunts that they have in a bit, but just look at this one. The circuits often have tight chicanes put on straights, as the trucks only have 2 gears. But this dude gets it all a bit wrong, and hitting the safety barriers at the end of the pit lane. It's a big hit, but the truck just carries on. These things are unstoppable. And as you can imagine, this makes policing track limits pretty difficult, because a sausage curb is nothing to these things. So they just don't. Yep, they let you choose whether you want to cut the corner on the less grippy grass or take the asphalt route. Should try that in F1 for a weekend. Then there's the jumps. These things have incredible long travel suspension systems that are designed to deal with any landing, because these jumps are big. The trucks often get to heights of 15 or 20 feet before coming back down, and with a 1,200 kilogram truck, that's a lot of energy to deal with when you hit the ground. Just look at how much the suspension compresses on a jump and when they land. Now, all of this suspension travel is great for running over massive jumps, but not ideal for flat cornering. But these trucks manage to somehow corner at pretty impressive speeds, whilst being on 3 wheels. The tyres are enormous off-road racing tyres, and they're not actually dedicated asphalt racing tyres, but remarkably, they create good levels of grip. And actually, this is a really good way to see what weight transfer is going on in any car when braking, cornering and getting on the power. Look, the nose dives heavily under braking before the driver comes off the brakes and turns into the corner. At this point, they'll still be braking a little bit to keep the weight over the front of the car and on the tyres going into the corner. Then as they get on the throttle, the car sits down at the rear and the car picks up its inside tyre. This part looks absolutely bizarre. I'd absolutely love to drive one of these, but from a driver's perspective, it must be so off-putting. As you get on the throttle out of the corner, the whole car sits back on the outside rear and leans right over. It also must be quite difficult to see where you're going. But these trucks can bite. If you go into corner too hot in a normal race car, you probably spin. Whereas in these, you roll.
Was the tyre. Good news for me.
Anyway, I mentioned earlier some of the weird rules. Well, these rules are also it doesn't end up costing loads of money, and so it's fair. So the series themselves actually run all of the trucks. So they prep them, they bring them to the races, and then randomly hand them out to the teams before practice. So the bodywork is actually owned by the team. They pick up their truck for the weekend and drop the bodywork onto that truck. And that's so no team has a massive advantage. It comes down to how you set up the truck and mostly how well you drive it. Then in a race, after 4 laps, they have a competition caution to regroup the pack, meaning you can have an incident early on and be given the chance to catch back up again. This is so the pack is tighter together and the racing is really interesting. And to be honest, I didn't really get this until I realised just how easy it is to have a monumental shunt in stadium trucks. Just look at this. Watch the black truck here. This truck is in the pack and just misses the ramp, sending him rolling through the air into a massive shunt. And things go badly from there. The good thing is that these trucks are very safe, and every incident I'm showing the drivers walked away from, or even carried on racing. And in case you need another example, this one is mental.
Pat O'Keefe gets really sideways. Oh, my goodness, up into the catch fence, Matt Nolte.
Wow.
The jumps really add an extra level of difficulty. You have to hit them exactly right or they send you flying. But the drivers seem really good at this, sometimes going over them side by side whilst racing. But with all that, this extra challenge and being nothing like any other racing, the spectacle is still there. And so is the close racing. A bit like the close racing in Formula E. You can check that video out here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.